I'd like to talk about secondary grief in this video and my take on things with my own experiences. But before we jump into that, I would like to say hello. My name's Ghazala. I'm at the Heart and Soul Cafe. If you've been here before, thank you so much for coming back. I really, really appreciate it. And if you're here for the first time, then welcome aboard. Let's talk about secondary grief. If you were to look in the dictionary and look up secondary grief, it would be talking about the ripple effect of losing somebody. And so grief is actually the loss of something, loss of someone or something, or the end of something. But in this sense, in this instance, we're talking about the loss of a loved one. As most of you will know, many of you will know, that I very sadly lost my son 4 years ago. He was 22, had a sudden cardiac arrest. And, you know, he and I were on our own in our local park, and I tried to, I performed CPR. We sadly lost him that day, lost my son that day. Now, when we talk about secondary grief, we're talking about what else we lose as a result of losing that person. Okay, and that all those other losses that follow on from losing that person is secondary grief. If, for example, someone was to lose their partner, their spouse, and they were financially dependent on them, then you are, first instance, primarily, you've lost that person and you're grieving that person, but you also can be grieving all sorts of other things as a result of losing that person. It might be financial. You have to, reevaluate and look at your life and see how you're going to go on, living your life, how financially that's going to work because you are dependent on that person who you've very sadly lost. It can be small things as well. It can be, for example, if someone was to have lost their husband, it could be that, he was the one who dealt with everything when it came to the car, perhaps, like servicing the car and putting the petrol in or diesel in, or, charging the car electrically. So it could be all sorts of little things that add to your grief. And you might think, oh, those are just little trivial things, but it can all be an add-on, can't it? It can all be an add-on to how you are feeling. So secondary grief. Now, when I talk about secondary grief, for me, it comes like this. And so I'm going to use some of my personal experiences and some of my examples that I have. So I lost my son, who was 22. He was still studying. I wasn't dependent financially on him. He was still living at home. And so what's the secondary grief around my son? Well, for me, it's very much, and the word grief, the word bereaved actually means, in Old English, it's sort of a verb of bereafian. So it comes from the root sort of meaning of that is lost, to be robbed. Okay, so I feel very much robbed of so many things. After losing my son, I feel robbed of the experience I would have had by going to, once he would have graduated from university. I feel robbed of that. At the ceremony where he was going to get presented his degree, I feel robbed of that. I feel robbed of, him going on to getting married, meeting his wife for the first time. I feel robbed of that. I feel robbed of him finding his first job or becoming a father. So there's so many things I feel robbed of. So those are some of my secondary griefs around losing my son. But there's more, because he has two sisters, two older sisters. He was the youngest. And sometimes when it comes to siblings, they can be referred to as the hidden, the hidden mourners, that's not always seen. And people don't always pay enough attention to siblings that have lost, brother or sister. If I think about my eldest daughter, who's 7.5 years older than my son, she went into this role of trying to keep everybody together, to keep things together for her parents and for her younger sister, to be the strong one. Okay, so she played that role, and she played it very well. But she did realize that she was playing it, and she did share that with me. And then I was mindful about that. So what she was carrying and her pain was something that I was feeling also. My younger daughter, who's 13 months older than my son, so they were almost like twins, was feeling pain on another level. Her grief was different to her elder sister's. And her grief is something that I feel too. So secondary grief there for me is taking on everyone else's grief and pain as well. So that goes to say with my husband as well, what my husband's going through after losing a son. I feel his pain, I feel his grief also. So secondary grief can really have a lot and can sort of run far and wide, can't it? And we're not always mindful about that. We're not always considerate about that. We're just maybe focusing on the one primary, grief, that the primary loss is what all we're sort of thinking about. We're not thinking about all that ripple effect or that chain reaction, if you like, or the domino effect that sometimes you could refer to it as, that domino effect of what losing someone, how impactful it can be, and how far and wide that loss can be felt. I think we need to be mindful about it, and we can only be mindful about it if we sort of acknowledge that there is secondary grief and where the secondary grief actually lies when it comes to ourselves and when it comes to others around us, our loved ones, our friends. So when you're supporting somebody in their grief after loss, we can be maybe a little bit more mindful about that and think, okay, it isn't just that primary loss, there's actually a lot more that's going on here, and be mindful about that. So it might sort of change the way you may support someone. It might change the way you think about your own grief and your own losses as a result of losing one person, because it can impact so many people's lives in so many ways around you. And it's not always some things that you think about straight away, but it's something to think about, absolutely. So, secondary grief. I hope you found the content of this video helpful. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, because it is my ambition here to build this platform where we can have each other's back, where we can share, where we can talk about what we're feeling without someone sort of rolling their eyes or looking at their watch. And, we can sort of talk about what we need to talk about. And that's really what this is about. So thank you so much for listening. Do share this video if you feel that's going to be a help to somebody else. And thank you for, watching. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thank you. Look after your hearts and souls.